You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to another episode of Ethnosynology. I'm here with Carson Black, a good friend of mine who I've known for almost a decade now, more than a decade.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we're getting close. It was summer of 2017, yep.
Yeah, okay, wow. For those who don't know Carson, she is the closest thing to Jane Goodall, or the closest person, I should say, to Jane Goodall, or closest, you've done the closest thing to it that I know.
Yeah.
So I respect the hell out of that. And yeah, when you came back, was it 2022 from Senegal? I was just like, tell me everything.
Yeah.
And you showed me your camera and stuff. But I'm just going to can you introduce yourself to the audience and let people know who you are?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for such a awesome intro. It's always a nice compliment to be compared to the great and wonderful Jane Goodall. As David said, my name is Carson Black. I am a primatologist. I'm a biological anthropologist and a conservationist. I studied chimps. Actually, I got my start in anthropology through primate paleontology at Colorado State. And then I did some archaeology field work for funsies because there was a site right outside my hometown. And that's where David and I met. I was like newly 19 years old. I was such a baby that first summer at Laprelle. And I got my start with live primates really through a field school. I knew I wanted to study live primates. I was really fascinated by our relationship to primates, both evolutionarily speaking and like present day conservation conflicts. And I studied howler monkeys in Costa Rica for a month. It was and still remains one of the very best experiences of my life. And we spent 4 weeks running around the rainforest, chasing howler monkeys, and chimps came for me kind of later. I was in grad school and worked as an intern at a sanctuary through Central Washington University. The sanctuary is Chimpanzee Sanctuary Northwest. They're situated in Cle Elum. And that was my first foot in the door with chimp work in any respect. And then COVID happened while I was in my master's. It was really weird. None of us could do any field work. We all had to rely on like previously collected data sets. And at the same time that we were writing our master's works, I was applying to PhD programs and got in at Texas State University and studied chimps for the next 2 summers during that program, which was simultaneously the hardest and also one of the most magical things I've ever gotten to experience. And a lot of what I've been able to do and study would not have even been possible without Jane Goodall's existence.
Yeah. Many questions I can follow up with there, but one, just starting with, I am incredibly proud of you. I feel like
Thanks, man.
Hopefully I said that in the beginning, but hopefully it came across. But yeah, just like, I remember you came, it was Laprelle, the mammoth site, which I've been posted about many times on this channel. You were there very young. I think I was 26, 25 maybe. But I remember you had you just knew what you wanted to do. Yeah. And you talked about chimps, and I remember you mentioned Goodall. I think we talked about it. I mean, it's over a decade ago now, but then you went to Colorado State, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you went down to San Marcos is where it is. Okay. Yeah, just incredibly proud of you. You did your school so fast because you just wanted to get out there and see the chimps, or see the primates at least. In the most part. As a kid, I'll try to keep this focused with Goodall here. I mean, I have my personal connection with why I was so sad this week, which I can also get into, but mainly to me, she was just like the Charles Darwin of the modern era, like in terms of her contributions to science.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, like a living Darwin who fundamentally shifted because Darwin changed science and our view of evolution and how we understand species But then Goodall, I'm sure you can elaborate on this, took it to another level of like, yeah, but like chimps are also people.
Yeah.
So I'll leave this to you. What first got you into her? How'd you first find out about her as a kid and all that?
So I did not like have my heart set on primatology or anthropology. I didn't even know what anthropology was when I graduated high school.
Okay.
I was going through a phase as a kid. I was going to be a dentist, and then I was going to be a veterinarian, and then I was going to be a psychologist. And that was what my major was the first time around. And then prior to my like freshman orientation, I switched to anthropology on a whim. And I was a musical theater kid in high school. And so I thought I was going to do cultural anthropology and minor in music. And that is not at all what went down my first semester at Colorado State. And it was the biological part of it for me. And Professor Kim Nichols at Colorado State is who really like lit that passion in me. I had her for my intro to biological anthropology class, and we had just kind of scratched the surface on Jane Goodall and primate evolution and how it ties into humans. And so the next semester I took like the very first primatology class I could, and Kim was teaching it. And that was really where we delved more into a lot of like the early studies, because it was a more focused class. And so I read a lot of like the early publications on the tool use, and I cited Jane Goodall. I swear it had to have been like every other sentence in my dissertation proposal.
Sure.
She really was like the figurehead in primatology, particularly for the chimpanzee people. So and I had grown up kind of like in the era of Steve Irwin.
Yeah, same.
But I was very young when he died. And so I also kind of grew up with his daughter, Bindi, on the screen. And so I was kind of like Jane Goodall adjacent, particularly because I was not a child that like loved the outdoors. I was not catching frogs or crawdads, or like I hate bugs, which is really funny because when I was in Senegal. For my PhD, I'm up against like bugs that you just would not even believe, like emperor scorpions the size of your shoe.
Pass.
And spiders and like all the creepy crawlies you can possibly think of. And so, yeah, I kind of came into anthropology and primatology as like a happy accident.
Okay.
It was not like innate in me as a child. I was not like, I'm going to go to the forest and I'm going to study. No, I was not. The outdoors did not interest me. Gotcha. I like animals. I've always grown up with animals, and I've always cared a lot about conservation, but it wasn't like what I thought I was going to study and eventually try to make a career out of.
Yeah. You were in college at Fort Collins when you first went to La Prairie, right? That's how Rich brought you there? Okay. You had gone in pretty young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's so long ago, but
I know. And I just saw Rich this past weekend, and he's the exact same like wonderful Rich that we all know and love.
He's the man. For those listening, Rich Adams is he taught at Colorado State, and teaches at Wyoming. I think he's retired now, but wonderful Wyoming archaeologist. A wonderful human being. Him and his wife had me over for Thanksgiving this past year. Yeah, so I took a primatology course I guess I should phrase this way. When I majored in history first, but I took a intro to anthropology class with Dr. Lynn Miles was her name. And she was a primatologist. She had helped teach baby orangutan sign language. I believe its name was not Chantek. That's a different one. Maybe it was Chantek. Doesn't matter. She was really into primatology, got me into that. And I was a history major, but I took this anthro class, and I was like, this is primates. This is human evolution. This is culture. This is like what I want. And we watched the first class, we watched Dave Chappelle's like old show, and like it was a scene from, I mean, Dave Chappelle's different now, but like just breaking down why is this funny. And she had us like understand like cultural norms and things like that. But it was just this interesting combo of all these different topics that I was so interested in. But at the core of it was primates to her. Yeah. And she kind of focused on that. And she taught her orangutan sign language. And I don't know if this is true, if it's been debated or not, but it asked for tomato toothpaste when they were at a drive-through. And she was like, what the hell is he saying? And then, but he was rationalizing ketchup is like tomato toothpaste. And he loved ketchup. So anyway, long story short, I switched to UT Knoxville, which had a better anthro program. And in that school, among doing all the bio stuff that I did in archaeology, I took a primatology course because I loved Jane Goodall my whole life. That one teacher inspired me pretty hard to do it. And then I got to study the chimps at the zoo. All that to say, I learned a lot more about primatology theory in that class, which I can't for the life of me remember much. But I remember there's a dude
That's
who
okay.
went...
Who remembers theory anyway?
Very true.
Just a class they make us take.
Some guy went and like lived in a cage with gorillas or something, and he ended up dying. I remember that being something I learned. And there were like early attempts at like interacting with apes and other primates that like didn't work well, but Goodall was the first to like have this big breakthrough. From your studies, sorry, that was a long way to get here.
No, that's okay.
As a primatologist who went to grad school for this, can you tell me a little bit more about like primatology theory or like the history of it?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's
Washburn. That's one of the guys.
Yes, he's a big one. I think he's often called like the father of American primatology. Okay. And he was at WashU St. Louis, I think, for a really long time. I could be wrong. I might be thinking of somebody else, some other big name. But yeah, Washburn is a big name. Goodall's a big name. Louis Leakey is big in relation to Jane Goodall because he's a paleoanthropologist. And so he and his family, the Leakeys, the Leakey Foundation, are very well known for their excavations of early hominins in Africa. And Louis Leakey had been thinking for a long time that, you know, these fossils are really similar to what we see in apes. They're working in Africa. Like he knows chimps and gorillas. And he thought like, there's got to be some sort of evolutionary connection here. And I think we could get some insights if we studied live primates. Well, at the time, this is like 50s, 60s, women weren't in these fields really at all. And if they were, it was in like secretarial positions, never actually boots on the ground doing field research. And there had been attempts, I think, to study chimps and gorillas that were primarily led by men and were unsuccessful a lot of the time. And Louis Leakey thought, well, maybe women might have a different approach. They might be able to come into this less as like a threat. And so he... Jane Goodall was his chimp person, Dian Fossey was his gorilla person, and Biruté Galdikas was his orangutan person. And so they're known as the Trimates, these three women who went out and did it. They habituated groups. They started long-term behavioral studies that are still conducted today. I have friends who are in school in DC who are doing their dissertations at Jane Goodall's site in Tanzania. That's amazing. And Ellen DeGeneres is now tied in with the Dian Fossey work in Rwanda. And wow, now Biruté Galdikas is the only one still alive. Fun fact, fun tangent, I was at a wedding where Dr. G was.
Okay.
Just as a fun aside.
Like she was at the wedding or you were at the spot?
She was at the wedding. She was a guest. I actually have a picture of me like sitting at one of the tables and she's like a couple tables behind me, but you can see her head.
And you're like,
so that's my like, yeah, I've seen Biruté Galdikas, did not introduce myself. So yeah, we had the Trimates and they were really pioneering and and really got our foot in the door as women to get into these field positions and these field roles. At the same time, there was also Japanese researchers that were trying to establish themselves also. And there's always been kind of a competition, or just like a little bit of headbutting between what we deem like Western science versus like Japanese science and European. Or European is sometimes grouped in with Western too, but it's just important to note that like these women were not the only ones doing this work. There were other people coming in and also doing this. And I'd also like to note that none of Jane Goodall's work, nothing we know about those chimps from 60 plus years of study would have been possible were it not for the field assistants that helped her and lived with her out in the bush and kept her safe and kept her fed and used their local indigenous knowledge to help her get to where she wanted to be. So it's important to note, I think, in early primatology that like these white women were coming from a place of at least a little bit of privilege to be able to do this kind of work. And it wouldn't have been possible without the help of local people also.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just watched Jane again. It was like a couple years ago, that documentary where they had a bunch of old footage that hadn't been seen before. And I noticed the first time it was very centered on like, you know, I think it was her husband at the time they were filming, her climbing all this stuff in her Chuck Taylors, which I found badass. But like climbing trees.
I look at some of those old pictures of her wearing those Converse and I'm like, how did you?
Yeah.
Because I was wearing like the thickest, toughest hiking boots I could find. Because you're walking like miles and miles and miles every day in rough terrain, sometimes in inclement weather. And she's just out here doing it in like little black Converse.
The least waterproof and gripping shoes.
The least waterproof, the least like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're going to slip. There's no traction. That's what I was looking for. There's no traction.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. Maybe I'll look back. Maybe they were sponsored by Converse or something, but maybe she just liked wearing them. But I found that interesting. But to my point, I noticed in that documentary and from early stuff with her and the Nat Geo stuff, it's usually just her in the field with the husband or before they were married, filming her and stuff. But there were people like local African people with boats, and the mom would give medicine to them and stuff. Were they with her in the field the whole time too, or was she totally alone? Because I know later on there were students and stuff that came, and there were more people that came. But
I'm really not. I couldn't tell you for sure one way or another. A lot of the footage seems to make it look like she was there alone and kind of traversing on her own. I simply do not think that would have been possible. Yeah. Because I've been in the field, I've been in the bush, and I simply could not navigate that terrain by myself. And so I think even in that footage where we just see it's just her, like there has to be people in the background. There has to be people with her, because it is simply impossible to navigate unless you have been born there and raised there. And like we would be at Fongoli, and I would just get completely turned around. Like, I could have never done that by myself. And so I don't think she would have either. They had to have been with her in the field, because how else are you going to know not to eat that leaf, but that this one is safe? How are you going to, like, the biggest thing that I always struggled with is like the people who are out with those chimps every day, those communities that have been living with them for generations and generations, they know how to roughly track these animals. I would have no idea where to start, which is a large part of the reason why at Fongoli we do morning nest to night nest follows, so that we know where to find them the next morning. Oh, okay. So like where they sleep and where they wake up. Yep. Okay. I'd love to dive more into what you experienced too, but I guess I had one more question with that. I was thinking, with all this like
push for indigenous knowledge and things like that as of late. Maybe I just haven't looked into it, but I'm sure the local, I think it was a tribal group that lived near her. I remember hearing about like a witch doctor and stuff. Like did they have like ancestral knowledge of like chimps and like how they behaved and stuff? Or was it just something was Jane really the first to go in and track them down and find them?
I think she was the first to like go in and systematically do it. Yes.
Okay.
But as far as I'm aware, there is anecdotal evidence dating back to like, I think like the 16 or 1700s that there's like anecdotal evidence that chimps were using tools.
Okay.
And so her big groundbreaking thing was that chimps used tools to fish for termites. That it got so big because it was the first time it was published. It was the first time it was scientifically acknowledged by like peer review and a journal. I don't think that's necessarily the first time it's happened.
Yeah.
In fact, I know it's probably not the first time it's happened. Chimps are wildly smart and they have been here longer than we have. And so I think they've been using tools all along. It was just a matter of Jane having the foundation and the tools to go in and systematically record it and report it. But the people that lived there absolutely knew. And when it comes to indigenous knowledge and indigenous science, a huge barrier is like the publication part.
Right.
And getting it out, getting it peer reviewed, and like making it known to the greater scientific community is often what's very difficult.
Sure.
So,
and that's what
but it doesn't mean it's any less like valid or important. In fact, it's arguably more valid than like what we as white people could go in and do.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that really interested me watching I watched like 3 or 4 of them this past week. Just trying to like wonder more about that. And I know she was really good about all that too. And like, especially supporting local communities and
especially, I think especially like as she started to shift away from field research more to like advocacy and raising a platform. I think she became very aware, and she knew, I think inherently while she was doing her work, that you can't have good conservation without including people, because it just doesn't happen. And so I think especially in like the middle towards the end of her career, she was really vocal about getting the right people in the field, getting the right voices heard. And it's kind of bittersweet that like even at her very end, she was on tour advocating. And
till the day she died.
Yeah, quite literally till the day she died.
It's pretty damn cool. I might cry. But yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I guess one last thing too is I think it was her interview with Neil Tyson. That was a couple of years ago. She had said like, the bushmeat trade is like the biggest problem for chimpanzees. But just being an anthropologist, it was interesting hearing her point of view on this, because it's like she culturally understands why the impoverished people there have to participate in this to live and subsist and deforest to make food and grow food for themselves, which contributes to this habitat loss. But at the same time, she's like super advocating for like, we need better education and better, investing in these communities so that they don't have to do this and like burn the forests and kill chimps and stuff. And she's just so like, whenever she speaks, she's just like, it's like listening to a saint, but like, she always like followed it with something that I was thinking. What's that? Patron saint of chimps. I would agree. I think that'd be an apt title for her. But anyway, she's just a great anthropologist. But moving on to your stuff in I guess section 1 and 2, can we talk about the howler monkeys first and then go into chimps? Yeah. So how'd the howler monkey stuff come about?
The howler monkeys happened because I was really ambitious as a college kid. And I went to Kim Nichols one day in her office and I was like, I'm going to go study chimps. I'm going to go to grad school and I'm going to go study chimps. And she was like, okay, we might have to like kind of lily pad hop our way over to that, because chimps do not just happen overnight. It's a lot of grit and determination and like knowing the right people. Because primatology is like, anthropology is kind of out here. Primatology is like this.
Yeah.
Like it's a really small, really niche field. A lot of people, like everybody really knows everybody. And as it turns out, there are very few wild chimpanzees left on the African continent, and field schools with them are, I think, pretty difficult to do logistically because let me tell you, when I went out to study chimps for the very first time, I was 23, or maybe I had just turned 24, actually. I had just turned 24. It was the summer of 2022. It was my first year of my PhD. And when I went out to Africa for the first time, I was so unprepared. Just in the sense that, like, wow, if I had been a field school student trying to do this, I think I would have had to go home early. Like it's just incredibly difficult work. And Kim already like knew this. She'd been in the field. She had done the same field school that she recommended to me. And she said, start with howler monkeys. They're what she called the gateway drug to primatology, because they are several like species of them are endangered. Yes. But for the most part, they're pretty populous in Central and South America. And South America is I would personally say, like, a lot easier to navigate as a student, as a young woman, than Africa was.
Sure.
And so I enrolled in a field school during my second summer. And I was so scared. I look back, I have the diary I kept, like the journal I kept leading up to that trip. And I was, I think, 19 or 20, and I was so nervous. I was so nervous. It was the first time I was traveling abroad by myself, and I hadn't taken Spanish since high school. And so I felt like I was kind of flying blind a little bit. And I think what scared me the most at that point in my career was like navigating the airport by myself. Because
it is difficult.
it seems pretty daunting when you've only traveled with like family or groups of people. I'd been to Europe, but it was with like 300 other Wyoming musicians that were all going for this Ambassadors of Music thing. And so traveling to Costa Rica by myself felt very scary. And it ended up being the best thing I think I could have done for myself during my college years. It was just such a big learning experience and really pushed me out of my comfort zone. Like, that field school was what introduced me to botflies.
Oh, fun.
Not that I had one or knew, but it was just like a running joke that like every mosquito bite we got, oh, better hope that's not a botfly, because you're just like constantly sweating. You're constantly wet. It's raining all the time. You're constantly getting bit no matter how much bug spray you use. And we stayed in a big field house. And so all the students slept on the top floor, and the ground floor was like the kitchen and where we studied and worked and did lectures and stuff. And every day, from the minute you heard the howler monkeys in the morning to dinner time, we were out in the forest. And you're in like knee-high rubber boots because you're in a very wet rainforest at the height of rainy season. And the sound they make, if you don't know what to expect, it's very terrifying. They are the loudest land animal. They could make a grown man go deaf.
I remember you telling me that. I was kind of blown away.
Yeah. And they're like big cats. I didn't realize how small they were, really, because they're up so high and you're just craning your neck the whole time with a pair of heavy binoculars. And I love howler monkeys. I will always have a special place for them because they were the first species I studied in the wild, but they don't do much. They really don't. They're eating really fibrous leaves, so they have to like digest it, and it takes a long time. And so they just sit, they eat, they sleep, they scream. And leaving Costa Rica was really hard because I had such a great crew of field school students with me. Like, I'm still in touch with friends from that field school. And yeah, it was magical. I think I was 20 years old and just felt so like I'd really found something I loved. Yeah. And I just wanted to keep doing it. I didn't care if I stuck with howler monkeys or picked another species down the line. I just knew I wanted to do field work. I wanted to study primates because they're just like us. And that was really the pull for me, was their relation to us, their behaviors, their tendencies, especially in like a conservation lens. And that field school really opened my eyes to the part that we have played as a species in these animals' declines. The field school I was at was in a fragmented habitat. So it's surrounded by like banana plantations and farms. And so these monkeys are exposed to pesticides and dogs and power lines. And that was really the first experience that, because I was seeing it, I really understood like what these animals were up against, what we were up against also as humans.
Yeah. I want to move to chimps, but I have a few more questions about howler monkeys. Do you think that, how would I phrase this? But like something I preach a lot is like, we can study wolves in Yellowstone to understand wolf behavior in the past, but Yellowstone, I'm sure as you know, is Jurassic Park. Like there's a big highway through it. There's a gas station. They're surrounded. That wolf behavior needs an asterisk next to it because it's not exactly how Siberian wolves would have first interacted with Paleolithic humans. With the howler monkeys there, do you feel like that, urban encroachment, and you mentioned dogs for sure too, like all those different factors, does that kind of not put an asterisk on the research, but is that something that's like heavily, do you think that has changed their behavior?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think even for howler monkeys, which I studied howler monkeys during my master's program also. And I can really attest to the fact that, and talked a lot in my work, that they're really resilient species. They're pretty flexible. Like if they've got leaves, they're pretty much fine. Fruit, cool. However, there is kind of, they might seem okay, but there is kind of like an unspoken, they can't tell us what's wrong.
Yeah.
But yes, like behavior is changing. So for example, like the deforestation, they're doing a lot of clearing for cattle ranching and grazing. And so to do that, you're taking out a lot of trees that are host to fruit and leaf species that howler monkeys heavily rely on. And so if you're losing trees, you're going to find other ways to get to the next tree cluster, whether by a power line. That's a big issue where howler monkeys are crossing and then getting electrocuted.
Oh.
And then they fall to the ground. And there's a lot of rehab centers in Central and South America that rehabilitate these animals and then reintroduce them. But like power lines are a big one. They'll also try and cross roads, and the feral dog population is bad in these forested areas. And so these dogs will attack. I mean, can you blame them? What else are they going to do?
Sure. Yeah.
They're dogs. So there's like a primal thing. And then what was the other one I did? Dogs, power lines. This isn't like a behavior change, but they have been seeing changes in howler monkey fur pelage. And so they're turning blonde because of pesticides that they're coming into contact with. It's doing something to the color of their fur, and that makes them more susceptible to predation by big cats and birds. And so they really rely on these trees as coverage and food. And by going in and changing the habitat and taking it away, they're having to find ways to get what they need. So I would say, yes, there's absolutely some behavioral changes going on. And no matter how flexible howler monkeys can be, they're really ecologically important. That's why I liked studying them so much in my master's, because they're seed dispersers. They eat seeds from these fruits, and then when they poop, those seeds get regenerated and eventually a tree will grow. So they're really ecologically important. And once you lose the howler monkeys, you're going to lose the forest.
Yeah. I think one of the major takeaways from my primatology class was like, it kind of did blow me away how much of like being frugivores, how much of seed dispersers primates are.
They're keystone species. A lot of them are keystone species that, like, if you lose that part of the equation, you're going to see die-offs at other levels also.
Yeah. Wow. That's super important. Man, I'm trying, it's all coming back to me from primatology, but yeah. So, one last question. Howler monkeys, they're the ones that are like monogamous, right? Or is that spider monkeys? I remember hearing that somewhere.
I don't think it's howler monkeys because they live in multi-male, multi-female. There's not really a very strict hierarchy. Okay. They're all kind of doing their own thing.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Gibbons are what we call socially monogamous.
Okay, so like wolves.
But gibbons are apes, not monkeys.
True. Which I didn't know that until college, because I would have thought they were monkeys. But
they don't have tails.
Lesser apes. Which is still like, I feel like it's a rude term for them, but I mean, it makes sense in terms.
There's been a big push the last year or two that I was teaching as a doctoral instructional assistant at Texas State, basically like a TA for a class. We were trying really hard to move away from like the great apes, Percy, the great apes and the lesser apes. And we were trying to move towards large bodied apes and small bodied apes.
Okay.
So that it was a little more inclusive, if you will.
Yeah, sure. And it's just gibbons and siamangs, right? That are included in that? You might as well just say the gibbons and siamangs.
The gibbons, like the tarsiers, they're their own thing.
Yeah, true. Tarsiers are the smallest primate, right? Am I mistaken?
No, that would be one of the mouse lemurs.
Oh,
is the smallest primate.
Don't even remember that. Okay, before I dig myself a further hole, I want to move on to chimps. So 2022, you came back from Senegal, and I was like, show me everything. And you sat there with me and McKenna and showed me your
on top of the bus.
Yeah, we're on top of the bus. Yeah. Handed me your camera, and we're like, just scroll. And I was just, how did that experience come about? And I'll just let you riff. Just tell me all about it.
It was, again, not like a happy accident, but just things fell into place really well. I had considered Texas State for my master's degree and wanted to study chimps, but ended up going to Central instead. And my advisor had emailed me. I was like, okay, well, think of me for your PhD. And I was kind of like, LOL, okay. And then I did. And so I studied with Dr. Jill Preetz for 3 years at Texas State. And while applying, she was really upfront and said, I'm looking to take 1, if not 2 people to start doing microbiome research on the fungally chimps. There's been a big push in primatology to do health surveys, and it's not like a chimp is going to come up to you and be like, hey, I'm like here for my doctor's appointment. Everything we have to do is non-invasive for the most part. And so where does that leave us? Fecal samples.
Yeah.
And so I went into that PhD knowing that I was going to be doing chimps. And Africa had kind of been my goal since college. I thought I would initially go the gorilla route.
Okay.
That was like my first big report project. And it was for Kim's class, primate behavior and ecology. And we all had to pick a species and write like a big conservation focused paper paired with a PowerPoint presentation on our chosen species. And I did the Cross River gorilla, which is like the most endangered subspecies. They are very genetically distinct, and there's only like a couple hundred of them in a very small part of Africa. I think they border Nigeria and Cameroon right on the Cross River, which is where they get their name. And so I thought, I was so young and so naive and was like, this is the exact species I'm going to study forever and ever. And so I was going to go the gorilla route. I was going to go to Africa. Chimps, like I said earlier, came a lot later for me. But it was like, wow, I'm going to do the damn thing. I'm going to go to Africa and I'm going to study chimp health. What is my life? And so my first year that we were there, it became very known very early on that we were going to have a chance to go to Jill's site in Senegal. And
it's Jill Pritz?
Jill Preetz.
Preetz, okay.
It's spelled like Pruitts, but it's pronounced Preetz.
She was just on the Star Talk thing I watched yesterday.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, okay.
We've met Jane a couple of times, and Jill, like all of us, we were just so shocked and in such mourning when we all got the news. But back to going to Africa for the first time. Jill had a former PhD student, now a professor at another university, who was like, hey, I have funding if your new PhD students want to go get a lay of the land at Fongoli. And so my primatology sister, my academic twin, Katie, and I went to Senegal together in the summer of 2022. And it was a life-changing experience. It was extremely difficult. I got very sick, which is not uncommon.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Not uncommon as your body gets used to diet changes and just the general, nothing is the same over there. Nothing. And I spoke no French, which is what they speak in Senegal. Paired with also several local dialects depending on the village you're in, and didn't know a lick of those either. And we were really flying by the seat of our pants. We really relied heavily on Jill for translating and getting us from point A to point B. And it was hard. I was so terrified. I was so scared. And I remember looking at Jill in our hotel room in Dakar after we'd landed. And I said, you wouldn't have brought me if you didn't think I could handle it out here, right? I'm not going to die out here. And she looked at me and was like, no, I would not have brought you if I didn't think you could handle it. You're going to be just fine. But it was hard. Chimp research is not like howler monkey research.
Yeah.
And the site is also a lot different. When you have a field school, it's in your best interest to have a big place for these students to stay, and designated meal times, designated cooks, and Fongoli is bare bones. But it was hard. It was just I remember we showered out of a bucket. This is my favorite thing to tell people, is that yes, I showered out of a bucket while I was living in Africa. Because you don't have running water at the field site. And I remember my first bucket shower. It's pitch dark. We got to Fongoli so late. It's pitch dark, and I'm standing in this little kind of lean-to hut thing where we all showered for the bucket shower, and looking up, and I could see the Milky Way. It was pitch dark, and I could see the Milky Way and all these stars. And I'm like, what have I done? Why have I agreed to this? I'm going to die out here. This is how it ends for me. It just felt it felt so overwhelming. I felt one of the things I'm most grateful for with my experiences at Fongoli and being in Senegal is that I felt so small. I felt so... everything just feels closer and bigger there. I don't know how to explain it, but the moon,
the environment
and the sun, everything just feels closer to you, and yet you feel smaller. And I think in those moments, I was just really aware of how big the world is, how much we have explore and ask questions about, and also being a white, non-French speaking woman in a foreign country was very humbling.
Yeah.
And I never once felt unsafe. I felt very, particularly by the kids, and the kids are what I miss the most about being over there. We were like the coolest kids on the block. They just, I just always felt really tied to the people from the moment that I got there. And the chimps are no exception. I mean, it's one thing to see them in captivity, like in a zoo, or
Sure.
my experience was at a sanctuary. And so I was doing a lot of like cleaning enclosures, preparing enrichment. We're not like going up to the glass and like playing, like what's the thumb war game? You don't ever want to touch a wild chimp. And I think Jane Goodall actually like lost a finger.
Yeah, part of her thumb was broken off
because she's like the leading efforts, or the leading expert, right? And still like lost part of a digit to a chimpanzee in captivity. And so it's one thing to see them like in captivity, and another to see them where they should have always been.
Yeah.
And we have done so much harm to chimps, but also like to primates at large, for the sake of our own like academic and research advancements. And so it's really humbling to be out in their environment on their turf.
Yeah.
And chimps, like howler monkeys, I was almost kind of shocked at how much smaller they seem up close. And we are never more than like 10 yards away. That was Jill's practice. That was in like the paperwork and protocols. We wear masks with them in the field because we can pass the common cold and flu back and forth. We saw the gorillas at, I don't remember what zoo that was, that caught COVID from one of their caretakers. And so we're always taking the best precautions that we can. And it's because they're on all fours that they look smaller than they actually are.
Yeah.
And I was very aware that this was like a very strong animal that could do damage if it wanted to. So you're always very quiet. You don't make a lot of loud noises. You don't do a lot of sudden movements. Like when you're out with the chimps, you are in their world, and you make yourself as small and as unnoticeable as possible.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that chimps also don't do much out in the field. And like we just would sit for hours and watch them termite fish, or just sit for hours. It's very hot in Senegal, where the chimps that I studied range. It's like the highest temperature of the entire chimpanzee range. I mean,
wow.
The days easily reach 32 degrees Celsius, sometimes 100 degrees or more Fahrenheit. And I mean, even in the rainy season, it's gotten a lot less rainy in the last several decades because of climate change. Mm-hmm. So it's hot and muggy. And chimps are black. It is thick black fur. And so what are they doing at the height of the sun and the heat in the middle of the day? They're sleeping. Okay. And so we just sit and watch them sleep.
While you're sweating and taking notes.
For hours. Yes. And dealing with the sweat bees, which are like, compared to all the bugs I dealt with, sweat bees are my least favorite. Because they just hover right around your face, and they get in your ears, they fly in your eyes. It's just like you're wearing a head net around your face, and then it gets hot, even though it's mesh. It's just like miserable. It is not.
I did do that on a project in South Carolina. I can't imagine Africa.
It is not. It's a magical place, but also bugs are not. The bugs are the worst part. But yeah, there's so many memories I have of these chimps, and they're just like us. I mean, they're just the kids. I have a really vivid memory of some of the kiddos. So they're like young adolescents. They're like 3-4 years old. They're newly weaned from mom. They think they're like all big and tough because they're not getting carted around as much. And the chimps at Fongoli have a fun habit of throwing rocks at us.
Okay. Tool use,
totally. And so the kids would like grab these rocks, and they're the big kind of like lava looking rocks. And they look like they're going to try and kind of lob it at us. And one of Jill's guys, who is with the chimps every day, Ketagu Fongoli local, all he takes is like one step in that little chimp's direction, and the chimp drops the rock. He's like, I wasn't doing anything. I was just looking at it. Like I was just playing with it. I wasn't going to do anything with it. They're like toddlers. They know when they're being naughty. They test boundaries, and God, they're loud. They're so loud, but they're so fun and fascinating to watch. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I miss the chimps every day. The magic. I feel so lucky that that's something that I've gotten to do not once, but twice. And even through like the really hard moments, it was hard. My first summer was extremely, extremely difficult for me. And getting sick in a foreign country without your mom is hard. And so I was really not keen on going back the second time, and was even more afraid the second time than I was the first time. And the second summer ended up being even more magical and fun than the first time around. And I feel like that second summer I really grew into myself and knew how to handle myself around the chimps and being in the field. And through being with those chimps, I've learned so much about myself and my comfort zones, and yeah, just always thinking, especially at Fongoli, the site that I worked at, the chimps range in a savanna habitat as opposed to like the famous rainforest that Jane worked in. And that more similarly mirrors what we as humans are thought to have evolved in, and become upright and bipedal in. And so walking around with these chimps every day, this is so nerdy and so anthropological of me. But thinking about like who was here before us, and just being with them is just indescribable. It's really humbling. And I don't know how else to describe it. It's just magic.
Besides that, thank you for sharing too. Besides the chimp with the rock pretending to throw it, like, do you have any other memorable, very human moments you saw with chimps? I know they were sleeping most of the time, but
they slept a lot. Louis, who is a young male, he's like up in his teenage years now. He's like getting into the hierarchy a little bit. And I don't think Jill would blame me for saying this, but he's such an asshole. Like he's just such a sassy mama's boy. And
I have a story with that.
And the first summer that I was there, it's like Jill must have told him that we were writing a paper on his bad behavior, because then he singled me out. And I'm not kidding. Like, that sounds ridiculous to say that I was singled out by a chimpanzee, but I kind of was. Yeah. We were out. This is first summer. We were out in, I don't know where we were in the habitat, but Louis was like in a tree and was kind of displaying at me a little bit. And so the guys, I think it was Michelle, Jacques, and
what does
Nazaire.
Displaying mean?
It means like he was kind of, he's making noise at me. He's gesturing to me. He's like pounding. Sorry. And
you just talked about bugs and one just flew in my face. Sorry.
Oh, love it. It's like we're at Fongoli. It's like we're in the field. We're living it.
This is all right. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So display is like, I'm showing you my teeth. I'm showing you how big I am. I'm going to make it big and loud so that you know that I know I'm bigger and tougher than you. But as he's like getting closer to me, he's unrelenting. And so Jacques and Nazaire and Michel, which are 3 of Jill's guys that live and work out there, kind of usher me off to the side and kind of get me to back away from him. And so in response to this, Louis climbs the tree and walks out on a branch and tries to pee on me.
Wow.
Like fully aiming, positioned himself and aimed for me. And the guys thought it was hilarious. Yeah. I'm like trying to get out of the way. Like, dude, really? What is your problem with me? And so the next summer, chimps absolutely recognize people. They absolutely, like in captivity, yes, they know who their caretakers are. They build bonds and relationships with them. But I would also argue they totally know who we are out in the field also. Even though Louis and I had been separated by a year, when I went back in June of 2023, he singled me out again. And you
just started chugging a bunch of water.
We were sitting in kind of this open, like we were under trees and in the shade, but it was kind of this open field with all these trees around the edge of it. And I had just like cracked open one of my literal military grade MREs to eat. And
you were in it, man.
I was in it. I was in it with my little like spoon fork hybrid pocket knife thingy. But I knew what I was getting into that second summer. I was not messing around. And so I'm sitting there trying to enjoy my like shredded beef in barbecue sauce. And Louis is once again in the tree just ahead of me. And I see him swaying. He's like really trying to get the branch to move and the leaves to shake, make some noise. And I see him pick up like a loose stick. And I have it on video. I even say under my breath, "Don't you dare." And then what does he do? Launches the stick at me. It completely misses me. It like veers off to my right, but I can see where it landed. And I look up at him and he's sitting there like, "I didn't do anything. You deserved it if I did." But they really do. They all have such unique, silly personalities. Like no two chimps are the same. And there's so many good things I love about those chimpanzees. And their silliness and their individuality is absolutely part of it.
When I, that primatology class I took, we got to go to the Knoxville Zoo and got like a pass that we could just go in. And like some of the students that took it as an elective just did the bare minimum, but I went every day because I free chimpanzee time. And I got to do ethograms on George, who was like the youngest juvenile. I think he was like 3.
Yeah.
2 or 3. But I mentioned this in the post and I'll say it again, but he was 2 things. He had there was like this depression in the enclosure, in one of the big display areas. And in the depression was like this big, I want to say like basketball or something. But he had a blanket and he was spinning the blanket around the ball, trying to watch it spin. And then he would wait for the ball to stop spinning and then do it again. And this is the first story. That lady noticed that was standing next to me with her kids with the stroller, noticed I was taking notes. And then she just kind of like walked over and like gently asked, like, "Why is he doing that?" And I was like, "Oh, he's just a baby. He's just playing with his toys." But like in my mind, I'm like, he's using fucking tools. Like, but I just wanted to, the
anthropologists in us are like, "Oh my God, it's happening."
Yeah, exactly. All in the mind, it's like, it's a zoo. He's in captivity. So it's a little different. But I remember her face just being like, "Oh, okay." Like I think she was thinking that, but she just wanted verification.
Yeah.
And then she told her kids too. And like, she just stood there staring at them while her kids are like running around. And parents at the zoo are always like wrestling their own kids, trying to get them to not run around. But she was like just enthralled with me for like a good minute and a half, just watching this. And it was a cool moment because it
childhood,
just like
childhood is like really ubiquitous across the primate order.
I could see that. Yeah. Especially through
even baby howler monkeys, like they will hang. So howler monkeys have a prehensile tail, which basically means it acts on its own as like a fifth limb. It's how they retain such good balance when they're flying through the trees. And baby howler monkeys will dangle from their prehensile tail, and they'll wind themselves up really tight one way and then let themselves go like kids on a swing set.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't think about that. And then the second version of that too is that same baby, or juvenile, I should say. He loved that blanket, and he would like do the like rolling it up and then whip it at people, or like his primate relatives, and they would snatch it from him and take it because he was just annoying. But I'm sitting there recording ethograms, and I'm like, all right, hitting, chasing, annoying, and eventually once Lou, his uncle, so his father and mother just were like, I'm done with you. And his uncle Lou would tolerate it more. So Lou kind of was his unofficial babysitter. And at least from my understanding. And Lou snatched the blanket from him and threw it. And then George picked up a stick and I posted this video on Instagram, but he'd run towards him, whip the stick on the ground, and then run back until Lou was like, enough, and chased him around. And then he like played on the jungle gym and stuff. But I remember giving the presentation to class, and Dr. Devlin was like, what was your interpretation of that? And I was like, well, he's just a jackass.
Yeah. He's being a little kid.
Yeah. And like, it was just so cool that like, because it's unscientific to say, this animal's being a jackass, but based on, this is not a botfly, I don't think. It's just a regular fly.
Better hope not.
Just based on Goodall's work, it is appropriate now to say like that's it's a human-like behavior. Yeah, he's being. All this ethogram says he's being a dick to his family. So,
and she was the first to give names to her study subjects. And people at the time were like, why would you do such a thing? Like, why wouldn't you just number them off? Because they're an individual. Yeah. Because these are families, because these are bonds and politics. And Jane, this is like a cute Jill tidbit that made me love her so much in my PhD. Jane named all of her chimps familially, like through the alphabet. So like Flo was a really famous F name, and they still can track her lineage through all these F named babies. And I remember asking Jill like early on in my PhD, like, oh, why didn't you do that with the chimps? Why didn't you go with like a particular letter for each family? And Jill was like, because I didn't want to. And it was such a cool, like, wow, women are badasses. and it was cool because like Jane really set the tone for us to be able to do that. But she wasn't one to say like, you have to do it this naming way. And so yes, while Jane, wow, two Jane names are really throwing me for a loop. While Jane really did open a lot of those doors and was the first to like implement some of these practices, I think it's really a testament to like the way science has changed and evolved so that we don't have to follow the alphabetical system if we don't want to, because we still have these systematic data collections taking place, and we can still track and know these individuals no matter how we do it. And it was really because Jane did it first that now we can like do it our own way also.
That's so dope. She named one Frodo, I think, too, in the F lineage. I might have been a different relation, but
Jill had a Bilbo.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Damn. Tolkien, all in the chimp world now.
Yeah.
One other thing too, that North Sentinel Island place off of India, where like that missionary was killed. Like they're very. It's an island off of India where they're like very hostile to any foreigners that come to the island.
Oh,
and they shoot at them and kill them. Have bows and arrows still. And like a missionary went, he died. This kid wanted to go missionize them and also died. And the government was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But I remember reading one of the only successful contact attempts with this island and tribal people was a woman from India who was an anthropologist who just same way. It's like less threatening for some reason. Just maybe her approach was different. I don't know what it was, but she had like the only positive interaction with these people. And not to just compare them to apes in any way, but it's just like just meeting a new group of people that aren't used to the Western world coming in. Like it is interesting that like in that sense, a woman was the first to make the most successful contact. So I forget what point I was going with that, but yeah, just women have an ability to do that. And I want to segue this into more about Jane, but like in that sense, like what did Jane mean to you in that way, and your professor by extent as well?
God, I've been thinking a lot about this since last week because I was so caught off guard. I'm not currently in academia. I'm taking a break from my PhD because, as you noted earlier, I did all of my degree programs really fast, back to back, without any break. And I experienced pretty severe burnout in the second year, going into year 3 of my PhD. And so I'm currently not associated with a university or a research institution. I'm not even working in primatology or conservation at all. I've had to really pivot, especially with the job market at the moment and the lack of funding from NSF, NIH, like all these big names that we as researchers really rely on.
If it exists tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the job market has been rough post leaving my PhD, but I'm currently childcare for a young couple with a 9-month-old. And
still primatology.
It is still primatology. And that's what I'm so glad you said that, because I've had to really shift my thinking that, I'm like just a nanny. I'm just the sitter. I'm just childcare. That's not at all just what I am. I am like, what's the word we use? I'm non-related kin.
Yeah.
I am
alloparenting.
I am alloparenting. That's exactly what I'm doing. And I love it. I'm watching this child. When I started, she couldn't even sit up on her own. And now she's crawling and trying so hard to walk and stand up on her own. And that is inherently anthropology and primatology. And so I was making the baby a bottle, getting ready to put her down for a nap. And I opened Instagram on my phone, and the first post that popped up in my feed was the announcement from the Jane Goodall Institute. And I had to read it like 5 times to really understand what was going on.
Yeah. And
I was so shocked. Like I was just so kind of, what? This is, no, this isn't right. Like I'm trying to get the bottle heated up. Baby is fussing. I'm trying to digest what I've just read. And then the texts start rolling in from people I studied chimps with, from even Rich Adams texted me and was like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And I did not put the baby down in her crib for a nap that day. I needed to just like hold her while the news came in and hit me. And in talking to friends and colleagues and seeing everyone's tributes roll in was really deeply emotional. I unfortunately never got to see her speak. I never met her. And so mourning her loss as like personally as I have has felt a little weird, because it's not like I knew her personally, but the magnitude that she was, and as a primatologist especially, like there is no one that advocated for the study of primates like Jane did. What Jane meant to me is, like, you cannot overstate her importance to primatology, to wildlife behavior and biology at large. Like, I know several people, professors and colleagues and friends who are not primatologists. They study fish, or they are herpetology people, or, you know, anything but primates. And I think any of us with an ologist association felt really hollow. And I think a lot of us can attribute at least part of our inspiration to what Jane did and her work and the doors that she opened for women, especially, because girls didn't do what Jane did. And she went out, I think she was 26, and just said, I'm going to do it. It might not work, but I'm going to try. And so her validity and she just left an imprint that and shoes that we will not be able to fill. I mean, just there was no voice like her. There was no presence like her. And it just feels like there is a huge gaping hole in the world now. She wasn't, she was soft spoken. She really truly was thoughtful with her words. She wasn't like really loud and out and like obnoxious about it. Like, when she spoke, you really heard her, you really listened. And I don't know, I think it's also like it's so profoundly and deeply sad, because like the absolute worst men in the world are in charge right now. And and to lose like such a prominent voice of reason and kindness and like fighting for the world, newsflash, the planet is not in a good situation at the moment.
No.
And she was a huge proponent of like leaving the world better than you found it and holding on to the good that remains. And her whole shtick was like, have hope, even when it looks like there is none or there is no point. And so it feels like a really true loss to lose someone like that in the midst of what is happening globally at the hands of men.
Yeah. And Kirsty Nome.
Yes.
We don't have to talk about her. To that was beautiful, Carson. To that point too, something that really, because I'm an anthro nerd. I love like my whole, you can't see it here, but they can. My whole bookshelf is just books of anthro. And like, it just didn't really, I knew her my whole life. I've never met her, but I've knew of her my whole life. Mm-hmm. Like, she was on the wild thornberries when I was a kid. She like, I remember she was at Disney when I was there at Animal Kingdom when I was a kid, but I didn't get to see her speak because my brother wanted to do something else. But long story short, just a profound thinker. And it's not like what her ideas were revolutionary for sure. And that was like back in the 60s. But yeah, she went on to become just like a advocate for the planet, advocate for compassion and humanity and stuff. And to your point, something I found just absolutely moving and beautiful this past week was like just especially with, Charlie Kirk a few weeks ago with how polarizing his death was for people, and like in both ways, and just like, oh my God, like what do we say? Like, all that. Goodall dying was the opposite. Like, I just saw everybody, even like, it was even on Fox News, it was on everything. Everybody was just like, groundbreaking scientist dies at 91. Like, she changed the world. And like people I didn't even know knew who Jane Goodall was, just popped out saying like how much she meant to them and stuff. And it was just like, it just hit me because we lost like Darwin, but that was like living now. And did you watch her Netflix thing yet?
I have not yet. I've seen tidbits, and she's like such a badass even in death.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But again, like she says what she says about like Trump and Elon and all their cronies in a way that is not meant to be mean or like start drama. Like she just states the obvious.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know. I just, she was so foundational to what I wanted to do. She still is like to what I want to do. And I mean, we knew it was coming in the sense like she was 91. She was 91. Most people don't live to see their 90s. And
be as sharp as she was.
Yeah. And she was still like so coherent and so cognizant and so like 10 toes down was gonna like do the right thing and fight for what's right and what good we have left in the world. And I don't know. I think like her dying on the road while on tour is such a testament to who she was, but it's also sad that that's what she was doing in her final years. Like you're 91, you should be getting to like chill out a bit. And she was doing the damn work right up until she died. And so in that sense, I feel a little like, I don't want to go so far as to say we have failed her, that she was still doing this up at 91, because I don't think she would have had it any other way. But yeah, it's just her loss is so profound. The world, I was hiking with Rich and Andy this weekend, and we agreed that like the world just feels quieter now. And I don't really know. I think a big question people in my field are having is, how do we even begin to fill this void? Right. How do we continue to carry this torch that she lit and took on for us for so long? Yeah, it feels unfair, even knowing she was 91. I think there was a part of us that kind of always thought she was going to live forever.
Yeah.
Like she was just always going to be there. And now she's not. And that, even almost a week later, still feels raw and wrong and just unfair. Even though she lived a good, long life, like I said, not a lot of people make it to their 90s, let alone to travel and be as cognizant as she was.
And to meet as many people as she did. And
hundreds of thousands, if not millions. But yeah, I think even at 91, we were kind of like, she's just always been a presence. She's always there. And I think she always will be, because her foundation has gotten so big, and her kids' foundation, the Roots and Shoots stuff that she does with children, or did with children, I should say, it's prominent in like most of the states, several countries. Like she's left such a legacy that I think we can pick up our guts and go, but it feels like a really huge hole right now.
Yeah. One other thing I'd like to add too, but I have a final thing to say to you too, is like, doing comedy and stuff, and like doing, whatever you call it that I do, like social media, public education. She was the original, like at that with science, and like just her way of speaking, how like kind of like you pointed out, just so concise and like, or if that's not the word you used, but like just well-spoken she was, and just didn't have to say much, soft-spoken, but like, here's what I think. And just her ability in interviews to just sit and listen and then formulate a response so quick. I mean, a lot of it was probably repeated over the years and stuff too, but like, she definitely paved the way. I mean, I'm not a woman in science for sure, but like just for people like me and you to an extent too, to like be able to nerd out and talk about this stuff. But in that regard, for you, Carson, I would say, like, as much of an advocate as you are for, you know, social stuff and political stuff and, you know, just what you are passionate about, like, I think she'd be very proud of you and, like, just the way, you know, you carry yourself. And I respect the shit out of it, and I'm proud of you too.
Thanks, David. I love you so much.
I love you too, Carson. I'm gonna cry, but
I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, she just, like, you're the closest thing I know to her. And, like, watching her last Netflix thing, and watching some of those documentaries, I was just like, man, like, that's, like, she was just so fucking cool.
She was fucking cool.
Yeah, especially wearing the chucks. And that really threw me off in Africa.
Like, I just can't even. And she's, like, in cute little shorts too. I would not have been caught dead in shorts unless we were, like, in town or had a day off from the field, because the bugs, the terrain, like, you're already so filthy and sweaty and gross all the time. Like, I didn't want to be muddy. I didn't want to be, it's just funny to look at some of those photos and be like, yeah, she was a badass and really paved the way, not just for women, but for anybody who wanted to study science. And she really made us rethink about how we look at our study subjects and how we treat them in research. And yeah, it just, to anyone that listens and watches this, if you're feeling melancholy or nostalgic about it, pick up any of her books.
Yeah.
Seriously, just read her stuff, read her books, not like her scientific papers, because those are pretty dense, but read the books, because she tells the story, not just the science. And I think we could all do to be a little bit more like Jane.
Yeah.
I think the world needs it.
I think that's a great way to end it. I was going to ask you if you had any final thing to say, but I think that was it then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Unless you have more to say.
No.
Yeah.
Just that I think it's fitting Percy's being such a little diva, because Jane Goodall said in an interview, I think it was with Colbert, that chimps are not her favorite animal. It's dogs.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's such a testament to the fact that she was this big name and this big scientist and did a lot for us, but she was also a human and loved her dog and loved her family and was just trying to make the world a little bit better while she was here.
Yeah. I forget what the dog's name was that she had when she was a kid, but she said she owes it all to the dog.
Yeah.
Because she, like, would understand its behavior and all that. And yeah. Anyway, not that my book will fundamentally change how we, like, view dogs in the way we did with chimps. I would never say that. But, like, my agent, the same as you said, was like, I'm sure she would have loved it, because it's like looking at an animal a different way than previously. Because there's so many sinological studies of, like, dog cognition, behavior, how they speak and that, but, like, no one's talking about the anthropological aspect of it.
Yep.
And it kind of hit me this week too, because I'm, like, almost done with the proposal of the book and we're about to start sending it out. Thank you. Like, how much of that is due to Jane?
Yeah. It doesn't matter, like, what you studied or what your focus was. If you were studying animals and relationships and, like, what it all meant to some degree, like, that's what she would have wanted for you. And
yeah,
it didn't matter if it was primates, dogs, you know, and she would have loved your book. She loved dogs and she loved science. And I don't know, it seems really poignant to lose her right now.
Yeah. Especially with everything going on. Mm-hmm. And my last thought to that would be to, like, we're in this, like, era of science is just an opinion, and, like,
oh my God, I could do a whole podcast episode on that.
Yeah, right.
Stop chewing on the table.
But with that in mind, just the outpouring of mourning and support and just words of affirmation and like just love for her as a scientist. I think it was like super needed right now in a way.
I agree.
Because because it's like, oh yeah, this lady was out there doing this in the fucking 60s. Sorry to curse. And like has just nonstop till the day she died.
Yeah.
You preached it, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's 80 years. No, like 70 years of work.
Yeah.
Of just working tirelessly for what she believed in and getting as many people involved as possible. So yeah,
I agree.
It just feels hollow. It just feels sad. It feels unfair to lose someone good of that magnitude when there is so much discourse and hatred and like you said, polarization right now that we lose someone as good as Jane Goodall.
Perfect.
Cool.
And I think we can end it there.
Great.
All right, Carson. Thank you again.
You're so welcome.
Anytime. Anybody in the comments, if you have questions for Carson or about primatology, I'll send them to her, or you can read the YouTube comments yourself. But thank you. And again, I'm just so proud of you, and I'm glad you seem very happy right now. And
I am.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot, and I take that very seriously from you. So thanks for having me and for thinking of me. And
of course,
we'll continue the good fight.
We will.
The Archaeology Podcast Network is 10 years old this year. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy, our social media coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht, and our chief editor is Rachel Roden. The Archaeology Podcast Network was co-founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle in 2014 and is part of Cultural Media and DigTech LLC.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.